Hello and welcome to Winchester Now, our weekly news programme here on Winchester Radio. I'm Anna O'Brien with some of the news in our city this week, including a retired army veteran from Winchester who recounts his memories of the Korean War, serving as a mechanical engineer. A Hampshire Chamber of Commerce first, a Beta 3 event held in Winchester bringing charities and businesses together to share opportunities and skills, and the Fun Film initiative in the city supporting those living with dementia that has been such a blockbuster success here, it is being replicated elsewhere. Winchester Radio. A 92-year-old man from Winchester is taking part in a commemoration this week to remember the Korean War 70 years after it ended. Over 1,000 British servicemen lost their lives in the conflict, which began in 1950 when North Korea invaded South Korea and the United Nations stepped in. The war ended this week in 1953. Keith Webb is president of the Wessex branch of the British Korean Veterans Association and spoke to Winchester Radio's Mary Blaxland.
I had started my army service as a national serviceman and was commissioned into the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. As a full lieutenant, I had decided to stay in the army for another 8 years on a short service commission. And having done that, I then was posted to Korea. The difficult thing was that I was actually training potential officers at Honiton for the first 2 years of my commissioned life, which was no preparation for a REME officer, when I should have been learning to mend trucks and tanks and things like that. So I arrived in Korea really with no proper mechanical knowledge. I travelled out on the troopship Devonshire with the Duke of Wellington's regiment and the advance party of the 1st Royal Tank Regiment. We dropped them off in Busan in Korea, and then rest of us went to Kure in Japan, where we spent a few days just settling in and being assigned to things. About a fortnight later, I went over to Busan, and on that train journey, I had a bit of a shock because I was invited in the early evening to go and have coffee with the train commander. And as we walked up through the train, passed through 2 whole carriages of American second lieutenants, all sitting bolt upright and looking petrified. And as I passed through the carriages, I said, "That's a hell of a lot of second lieutenants." And he said, "We lose a lot." And that left a really, really deep impression on me because it showed me what I was getting into.
And things were really tough out there, weren't they?
Yes. The British lost something like 1,100 men killed, about 1,000 taken prisoner, and many, many thousands wounded over the 3 years of the war. And even though at the time when I arrived, the last 9 or 10 months of the war, there were negotiations going on at Panmunjom to end the war, the fighting never ceased. The Chinese kept on making huge attacks on our lines to try and dislodge us from positions. But the Duke of Wellington's regiment, who I went out with, had several of their officers killed and wounded. One of the majors I went out with lost his leg. The war went right on till within about a month of the end, with fighting on Hill 355.
And conditions were really tough out there as well.
What was so difficult was that it was very, very cold in the winter months. And I initially joined the 10th Infantry Workshop, which did all the field repairs to lorries and jeeps and that sort of thing, and the tanks and the guns. And also I got involved with a lot of vehicle recovery when vehicles ran off the road, which they often did because of the monsoon ditches and the inexperience of the drivers we had coming out to Korea. They're often only just been taught to drive, so they weren't really very good drivers. It was so cold that in our workshop we had to have heaters, big heaters, to heat the men's spanners up, otherwise they stuck to their fingers. It was that cold. Because you can't really operate taking an engine out of a truck with thick gloves on. We used to spend a huge amount on fuel. First thing in the morning, I remember waking up, my batman would come in and light my stove. It was just awful getting out of bed. We used to have double sleeping bags.
And then on top of that, you had the other end of it, you had the heat as well, didn't you?
Then in the summer months, we had the heat and the rain and that sort of thing, yes. The worst problem we had was probably the dust. All the roads were just mud roads. As you drove along, every vehicle threw up a huge load of dust. The speed limit was 20 miles an hour because of this. Because in those days, they didn't have proper air filters on the vehicles. A Jeep engine used to wear out after about 7,000 miles, completely wear out, and have to be replaced. So we were constantly changing engines.
And what was it like for you when the war ended?
The war ended, it was rather odd. Suddenly there was no more banging, no more helicopters flying overhead with wounded men. All we really wanted to do was to get home and get back to our families. But it was such a change from the incessant bombardment. There was always noise.
How hard was it to adapt once you got home? Was it something that sort of stuck in your mind, what you'd seen out there?
When you're young, you recover pretty quickly. I mean, I wasn't involved in the fighting. They hadn't invented post-traumatic stress syndrome in those days, but a lot of people do get affected by it.
And what are your thoughts now, 70 years on? I know there's a commemoration happening, isn't there, in London?
We're going to Horse Guards Parade, where there's an event being organised by the Royal British Legion on behalf of the Korean Embassy. The Korean Embassy have been absolutely fantastic to the veterans of the Korean War. They even gave us masks. We had 3 separate issues of masks during the COVID pandemic. They've always attended our lunches, Christmas lunches and that sort of thing, always given grateful speeches of thanks. And they've just endlessly shown great gratitude, because they look over the border and see what North Korea's like. And now South Korea is one of the most successful economies in the world. This parade, there's going to be a display of fighting vehicles organised by the British Legion, and the royalty are coming apparently. There'll be a service of remembrance, a laying of wreaths. All veterans, I think, like these events. They wear their medals, and with great pride they share experiences with one another. But of the thousands who served in Korea, apparently only 80 veterans are still able to come.
And do you follow what's happening in Korea? Because it's always in the news, isn't it? Do you follow what's going on there?
Of course. But what has been wonderful is that the Koreans have invited back anyone who wants to go for a return visit, and many of those who've been say what a wonderful reception they've had. And one of our branch members is going over this month, and he will take part in the celebrations in Seoul to celebrate the 70th anniversary.
Still to come on today's programme, new volunteer Chris Traylor reports on last week's local B2 event for businesses and charities. Mary has more on a successful business partnership that is providing a welcoming monthly relaxed film screening for those living with dementia. And of course we have Paul with those all-important uplifting community shout-outs for you. Up next though, here's Steve Walker with some news in brief.
Winchester Conservatives have selected Flick Drummond to be their candidate at the next general election, due to take place next year. Current Winchester MP Steve Bryan announced earlier this summer that he would be stepping down at the next election. Mrs Drummond is currently the MP for the Meon Valley constituency, but that seat will disappear under boundary changes the next time the country goes to the polls. The new Winchester constituency will include some of the current Meon Valley constituency. The next general election here in Winchester is expected to be a race between Flick Drummond for the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrat candidate Danny Chambers. At the last general election in 2019, Steve Bryan held the Winchester seat for the Conservatives with a majority of 985 votes against the then Liberal Democrat candidate Paula Ferguson. More industrial action is impacting services at Hampshire hospitals. The Society of Radiographers is taking part in 48 hours of strikes. It follows action by nurses, junior doctors and consultants. Radiographers are responsible for providing imaging services such as X-rays, CT, MRI, ultrasound and breast screening. The Trust warns patients may experience longer waits to be seen in emergency departments as a result, and some outpatient appointments have been postponed to ensure emergency care can be provided. Patients are again being urged to only use A&E for urgent needs. Measures are being introduced in Hampshire to deal with the growing problem of teenagers using vapes. The County Council has written to families of children in secondary schools with information about vaping, to highlight the risks and the support available. Prevention programs will be stepped up in schools, and trading standards teams will carry out enforcement operations to deter underage sales of vapes. Nationally, 20% of children are said to have tried a vape. And that's a roundup of the news in the Winchester area. I'm Steve Walker for Winchester Radio.
Last week at the Winchester Science Centre and Planetarium, over 100 people gathered for a Hampshire Chamber of Commerce First, a B2 Opportunity Expo and Skills Exchange event. Representatives from around 40 charities from across the county attended, including Winchester Radio. Here's new team member Chris Traylor to tell us more.
Last week, an event was held at the Winchester Science Centre to allow local businesses to network with charities, allowing mutually beneficial connections to be made and partnerships to develop. Joe McDowell, the Events and Partnership Manager for Hampshire Chamber of Commerce, who staged the event, explains more.
We're the first Chamber of Commerce to host a charity expo, so we've brought together 40 charities from across the county, covering everything from youth support through to cancer care, through activity centres, to the Gherkin Museum, to charities that support other charities like the Community Foundation, and we've even got a helicopter simulator outside from Hampshire Ambulance. We believe that partnerships are key to business, and actually we think that partnerships with charities are really special, and actually they can be a real game changer to businesses of all kinds, helping them understand the place where they call home, helping them make a real difference. Can be brilliant for developing their own staff and ultimately reaching those CSR and ESG objectives that define so many businesses nowadays.
Over 100 people attended the event. The Chamber of Commerce is looking for further opportunities to connect businesses and charities across the county.
An idea that started in Winchester is now being copied across the country. Each month, a free film is put on at the Everyman Cinema for people living with dementia and their carers and those aged over 55. It was the idea of the care provider Home Instead. Mary Blacksland went along.
The Pink Panther was July's Wednesday morning matinee. They may not be the most up-to-date shows, but they're chosen to be fun, with happy endings, no violence, or perhaps a musical or black and white memory from the past. The showing is free, and there's tea, coffee and popcorn too.
Hi, I'm Tony Winterton. I work for Home Instead. The cinema that we've been holding started in 2016 between ourselves, Home Instead, and the Everyman Cinema. The idea of the morning is to invite members of the community to come in and watch a film, specifically for those over 55, but the actual showing is designed for people also living with dementia. The actual cinema itself, the lights are kept on. It doesn't matter if people get up and walk around, etc. It's a very, very safe environment for people living for dementia to come in and actually enjoy a film rather than going to mainstream cinemas where it can be extremely difficult for them.
How important do you think it is to have something like this that they can come along to?
I think it's really, really important. It gets people out of the house. It gets them doing things and seeing things that they wouldn't normally do. Plus as well, they normally come with their carers, so the carers can have a bit of quiet time as well as watching a film. So it's almost like a small respite for people living with dementia. So yeah, it's extremely important for the community in Winchester.
I'm Shirley Duncombe. I used to work for Home Instead. I'm now retired, but I still do the Everyman Theatre once a month, which I really enjoy.
And what difference do you see it makes to people?
You know, I know Tony has spoken about the dementia side, but we get lots of older couples that have not got dementia, or one has and the other doesn't, but it's just a lovely morning, a morning where they can relax, they get their free coffee and popcorn if they want, and just to walk out of here feeling light-hearted. Whatever the weather, and sometimes I find whatever the movie is, people still come along because they know, and I think word is passed around that it's a safe place. You know, people must feel free that if they're over the age that we stipulate, then they're more than welcome.
And you must have got to know people over the years. What do they say to you about this?
People are so happy. I've even had little cards saying thank you. They're so appreciated. I try to remember them all by name, and I make a point of talking to each one of them every time. Just how are you, and just the weather, and just little chit-chats, which, you know, just makes it more friendly that they get to know you. We've got a variety of people, lovely, lovely people.
There's a buzz in the cinema before the film begins. Many people have got to know each other by coming here each month.
We've been coming for years. My husband had Alzheimer's and that's what it started off. Wednesday's our day out and we just come here first then go for lunch. So it's quite a nice day, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very nice because everybody's friendly here and the staff are really nice and it's just an enjoyable morning.
My wife introduced me today to come here. She's been here several times with some of her other friends and colleagues. I thought the film would be good and a nice experience for me to see.
Actually, I think if you're on your own, it's somewhere to go and it makes you meet people. and see a different thing rather than sit indoors by yourself.
Breaks
so we
the
find
routine.
it does. We find it, a really lovely, something to look forward to.
And is it more relaxed than going to maybe a normal showing at the cinema?
It is really. It has a different feel because obviously we're all golden oldies and we're all sitting here together. But yes, it does. It's lovely. And I think it's so generous of them. They bring you a coffee and popcorn if you want it, make you feel special.
You feel the same, do you?
Yes, I do, definitely. Thoroughly enjoy coming. It's marked every month on the calendar so we don't forget.
I'm Dermot Cantwell. I am the venue manager here at Everyman Winchester.
Why do you run this every month? Why do you think it's such a good idea?
It creates something that's accessible. It provides something for the people that have got dementia, but also for their partners, their carers. They can all come. We look after them, so we sit them down, serve them at their seat, deliver everything to them. So just to give them a nice treat. And then they're always really good films we show as well, so it's always quite good fun.
And it's lovely that it's free to come, and it's free tea, coffee, popcorn as well.
Yeah, completely free. It's just something we really enjoy doing, and it's just for us, it's just some popcorn and some tea. It's not a big deal for us to look after these people that could really do with a nice sort of day out.
The next film will be Ratatouille on the 2nd of August. The film starts at the Everyman at 10:45 with a warm welcome from 10:15.
Hi, I'm Paul Blitz, and it's time for the weekly shout-outs here on Winchester Now. We start with a big shout-out to the young performers from Winnell Rock School who put on their summer concert last week. As reported on Winchester Now recently, many months of hard work and preparation goes into the show at Winchester Theatre Royal. So thanks to the volunteers who support the young people in learning the skills and putting on the performance. Staying with young people, and 3-star athletes from the Winchester and District Athletics Club have been selected to compete in the Commonwealth Youth Games in Trinidad. Congratulations go to 17-year-old Annie Mann and 16-year-olds Alex Peck and Arabella Wilson, who will represent England in track events at the Games next month. The three train hard each week at the University of Winchester Sports Stadium in Bar End, and the club says everyone is very proud of them. And with the school year having finished now for the summer, our next community shout out is for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire Services Education Team, who have delivered safety advice to an amazing 28,623 school pupils during 472 visits. The interactive fire safety lessons are specially designed for each age group and key stage. Younger children have the chance to join in with educational songs and games and listen to stories, whilst older children take part in quizzes and complete worksheets to show what they've learnt. This ensures the children get the most out of their visit from the fire service, learning about fire safety whilst having fun at the same time. And finally, the Hampshire Hospitals charity says it's incredibly grateful to have been joined by many local schools to celebrate the NHS turning 75 by wearing it blue. A huge thank you goes to the Sunhill Junior School, Itchen Abbas Primary School, Sherburn St John Church of England Primary School and Angsty Junior School, who together raised over £500 for the charity. Join me next week on Winchester Now for more community shout-outs.
Winchester Radio.
That's it for this week on Winchester Now. We hope you've enjoyed this Winchester Radio programme. Remember, if you have a story for us, please do get in touch. You can drop us an email to news@winchester.radio. And you can follow us on social media to keep up to date, including Facebook, where you'll find us at Winch Radio. Many thanks for listening.